I want to love you. PYW, promising young woman. It's Oscars week, everybody, and I'm so excited, even though the Oscars are probably going to be really weird this year. Like I said before, I've seen most of the Best Picture nominees and some other category nominees from this past year already, but there were still 3 Best Picture nominees I hadn't seen, and our Oscar movie in the middle today is Promising Young Woman. Promising Young Woman stars Carey Mulligan from Baz Luhrmann's Great Gatsby and Bo Burnham, plus a number of smaller roles by really famous actors like Alison Brie and Alfred Molina and Clancy Brown, and discount Zac Efron. Just kidding, his name's Chris Lowell. This movie's about a young woman named Cassie who has kind of a different nightlife where she gets revenge on and or terrorizes guys who try to rape women. And it's terrifying in a good way. We've gotten a lot of these types of movies in the last couple years, like Joker, The Invisible Man, Parasite, where you feel like you shouldn't be rooting for these main characters in things that they do or end up doing, but you're almost like, I'm going to anyway. Because when they do those things, you're like, yeah, because it's a big fuck you to those villains, or maybe they're not even villains, but just other people, other systems in the movie that are traumatizing these characters or do something to these characters that warrant maybe what happens to them, even if you don't want to admit it. Carey Mulligan is the absolute best part of this movie, for sure. She is wickedly smart and cunning and creepy, but she's also very real. Like, she's a real, you see her as a real person with real emotions. Like, she's not just somebody who is like psychotic doing these things. She has a reason for it, and she's terrifying when she's doing it, but then during the day, she just works at this coffee shop, and she's just a regular person who, when she thinks about what happened to her friend Nina, you can see that it really hurts her. So you get the motivation of what she's doing, even if it's not always the best thing to do to people. And there's even a moment where she thinks maybe she might hang this up. So it's not like she's doing it just to do it. She's doing it because she has a reason. Bo Burnham. Every time I see him in something new, I become an even bigger fan of his. When I first saw his 2 comedy shows, Make Happy and What, at first I was like, oh, this guy's terrible. But then, you realize it's an act. And he has this simultaneous crudeness and down to earthness because he, in and of himself, Bo Burnham, is down to earth. But his characters are crude. And this character kind of puts those together. It was like a perfect role for him because the way that Cassie is, she's not touchy-feely until you get to know her. She can be sarcastic as well. So they were kind of a perfect match for each other. And their relationship is what really pushes the plot and transforms her because she kind of changes her motivations throughout the story as their relationship progresses. And so the plot itself is very well paced because it goes pretty much along with her character. The plot is what her character is doing and when and why. It's very structured, which personally I love because I love structured. I mean, down to like Roman numerals for each scene. You can easily follow where she is in the moment in terms of, does she want to continue what she's doing or not? And so when you get to the culmination at the end, it's like, this is it. This is the last bit. Something's going to happen here because things have changed. It does feel very Joker, where there's a bunch of subplots and things that happen beforehand, and then you get to that scene where he puts on the Joker makeup and he goes, and this is it. Something's about to happen because there's only one other confrontation to go, and it's sort of the same here. And the things that she does, I mean, there are some very intense scenes in this. There's also some very, I don't want to say slow, but more reflective scenes as well for her character, which is great. But the scenes that are intense are like, what is she doing? And it's so great in a very suspenseful way. But the ending is by far the most intense. Not even just what's happening, but what it implies for like real life and how women feel they are going to end up in real life. is horrifying. What it implies for what has to happen in order for this ending, this final resolve to happen, is terrifying. I do have one middle element, and that is slightly a big one, how the guys are portrayed. I think I've talked about this a little bit in my happiest season review, where you have characters who you're like, people don't act like that in real life, and then when they do, and you see people like that in real life, you're like, well, you're just like a movie character, you know? So it's this weird line between what's a movie character, what's real life. In this movie, especially towards the beginning, I felt like the guys were written very, I don't want to say stereotypically, but it was exposition. It was like, no one talks like that. But then if I were to poll like 100 women, I'm probably going to guess that like 90% of them would be like, no, I've actually met a guy who literally talked like that to me. I've met a guy who tried to do those things, who, acted like a movie character because they're just dumb. And so it's weird because I'm like, on one side, watching this movie just without context, I'm like, those characters are really poorly written. Like, especially towards the beginning. Towards the end, they get a little more complex because they're more freaking out with their excuses. But then on the other side, when you're like, guys actually do talk like that, and we know it, and they act like movie characters, then it's like, well, I guess that's pretty realistic then. So it's weird, you know what I mean? It's that weird line between what is real, what's movie, and how does that make what's written come off then in the movie. I do have one low, it's very small, because throughout the whole movie, I thought I might have a few more lows, but by the time I got to the end, you might think while you're watching it, oh, this is a little slow, I don't know where that's going, this seems out of place. But when you get to the end, it all makes sense. It all comes together. But I have one small one, and that is that there's something that happens with one of the characters at the end that's, I don't want to say convenient, but it's a major coincidence. It pushes other characters. I got to be really vague here, since there's only so many characters, but it pushes other characters to do things as well. It drives the plot, but it's still in and of itself a weird coincidence. It's like, so that just happened to be, if you've seen, I hope you know what I mean. Still an interesting thing that happens, but again, I can't be too specific. Promising Young Woman is wonderfully directed by Emerald Fennell. It is beautifully shot. It's terrifying. It's very well structured, very well paced, has really great characters, and is just super intriguing to watch for those very suspenseful moments. But it's also terrifying when you think about the fact that this happens if she was actually drunk. Like, it just makes you think, even if maybe it doesn't always happen quite that way and it's more subtle or whatever, it still happens. And it just makes you think. So this is the second movie after Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always that just makes me more cautious about, what am I doing? How is it, affecting these other people around me? Just, don't be a dick. I'm going to give Promising Young Woman a 3.5 out of 4. All right, 2 more Best Picture movies to go. Very excited. Stay tuned for those coming up this week. And then on Sunday, when the Oscars actually happen, I'm going to be doing like I did last year, my live stream of my predictions, as well as just kind of last-minute thoughts after having seen all the movies, what I think of the nominations and everything like that. So look forward to that. And as always, keep your hopes high, your stress low, and movies right in the middle. I'll see you guys later.